Big Live video's on. Okay. So then I got to check the chat room, right? Hello, everyone, or anyone, or perhaps no one at all. Welcome to a special edition of the online office hours for World Regional Geography, aka World Regions, right here at Virginia Tech, home of the Fighting Hokies. This special edition will not be brought to you by the state of Russia, because this special edition is, perhaps a whole hour just on the man, the myth, the invading legend, Vladimir Putin. It is President's Day after all, so I thought it was timely and fitting that we dedicate a whole hour to a president, just not a president of the United States, but the president of Russia, one Vladimir Putin. Before I get underway tonight, as always, could I get a shout out that people can both hear me and see me? And perhaps I'm getting that confirmation already from Hokie Medic 2015 that says, can we have a flash quiz for this? Yeah, sure, Hokie Medic. And in fact, I would love to give even more credit to someone that will help me create the test questions for this flash quiz. The more people that create the more questions for me as I lecture for the next hour, the faster I can get that flash quiz up. So, and I'll give you bonus points on top of that for making the questions. So for any of you interested in participating in the fun and getting some points to boot, please make questions along the way. Specifically, if I say this feels like a test question, but make your own as well on things of note that are important. Anything I repeat more than once probably is worth a question. And the way you do that is to write a question, multiple choice format. Give me at least 5 choices and put a little marker and asterisk after the right choice, because I probably will get the question wrong myself after I lecture for an hour. So give me a good question, the correct answer, and then some other stuff. And Hokie Medic says I'll add some wine questions to it. Thank you, Hokie Medic. I mean, I think Vladimir Putin may be sipping on some champagne right now in Russia, celebrating his reconquest of more territory on planet Earth, because this is a Sentinel Day in 21st century history. It's not, the end of the world or the beginning of a new one, but I've been following this Putin fellow for 21 years. And for 21 years, I've been seeing the path he's been going on. And at various points in the last 10 years, I've told students, hey, pay attention to what Vladimir Putin just did there. Hey, pay attention to what he just did in Georgia. Hey, pay attention to what he just did in Crimean Peninsula. Okay, pay attention to this speech he gave in 2014. He's throwing it down. Vladimir Putin is going to try to claw back by force as much territory as he can in Eastern Europe and perhaps even Central Asia. So the Sentinel Day of today is that he is now openly doing it. He has made a speech openly saying he's going to do it, and a speech that openly is suggesting he's going to take back as much more territory as he can, because in Vladimir Putin's mind, it is rightfully Russia's. Okay, well, I guess before I even get talking about the man himself, what is it we are speaking of? Does anybody know what happened today? You might have heard about things in passing. And hello to Terminator MT. Happy Monday to you, Terminator. Terminator, we'll be talking about the Russian Terminator for the rest of this hour. And that would be Vladimir Putin. So for those of you completely not in the know, what happened just earlier today is that Vladimir Putin did what most of us were kind of expecting. Expecting is a strong word, although I have in many times in the past 5 years suggested something like this is very likely. So when this news came out today that Vladimir Putin's Russia basically said, hey, we think these two parts of another sovereign state, there's two parts of the sovereign state called Ukraine, and two parts of that, Donetsk and Luhansk, we believe are independent countries, and we recognize them, and immediately 1 second later, we recognize them as independent sovereign states, and immediately 1 second later, we send in Russian troops to help defend and support them. And that's that. And so In the stroke of a pen, after much hoopla for now 3 to 6 months of Vladimir Putin building up a military presence all around the Ukrainian border, he has done what is not terribly surprising to anybody who has followed his career his whole life. And I'm not suggesting I'm that smart. I'm actually surprised it took this long. I thought he would have done something like this a while back. So I'm not shocked nor surprised that Vladimir Putin personally has went and took over part of Ukraine. I'm not shocked nor surprised, but I won't be so arrogant as to suggest, oh, I told you he was going to do exactly that. I don't know what he's going to do. Nobody knows what he was going to do. Vladimir Putin didn't know what he was probably going to do 6 months ago. But it's not that, quite frankly, it's not even that exciting because it's pretty predictable. The next question that is much less predictable is, will he go ahead and take all of Ukraine? I tend to think not, but we'll see how things play out. So that's exactly what happened today. Welcome back, R Cover C, with your Velociraptor happy face. What happened today? Earlier today, Putin says, oh, by the way, I met with all my counselors and advisors in a 20-hour session, and woe is us. The poor leaders of Luhansk and Donetsk came and asked for our help. They came and asked for us to support them as sovereign states. We don't know what else to do. We have to, because there's Russian people there, ethnically Russian people. So our hands are tied. We have to recognize Luhansk and Donetsk as independent. And then 1 second later, and then we have to go help them. They asked us for their help, and we're good Russians. So we're going to go have to help them. So they sent in the troops. That's a done deal, never to be taken back. Donetsk and Luhansk are now officially part of Russia. No one will recognize this in the rest of the world except China and Venezuela and possibly Iran. No one else will recognize this, and everybody will say this is illegitimate, it's not fair, it's not right. But the reality at the end of the day, I'm here to tell you the way things are, not the way you want things to be. And the way things are just like the way that Russia absorbed the Crimean Peninsula. It happened in a very similar situation. The Russians covertly went in, took it over, then let them vote to see if they wanted to join Russia, and lo and behold, they all voted to join Russia. That's exactly what's going to happen here, Luhansk and Donetsk. And the rest of the world may decry it. The United Nations will say it's terrible, but no one will do a damn thing about it. This is now Russian territory. The Russian state just grew today. And I'm saying this is kind of a sentinel day because Vladimir Putin's unabashedly and unashamedly doing this. Gave a fiery speech that claimed Ukraine was part of historic Russia and that there are other parts of Eastern Europe that might be part of historic Russia. If I was living anywhere in Eastern Europe, I'd be a little worried right now. If I lived in Kazakhstan, I'd be a little worried right now. There are Russian troops in Kazakhstan, which are probably never leaving again. So Vladimir Putin has fully now, at the apex of his 21-year career as the leader of Russia, is completely back in charge and flexing his muscles, saying Russia is not only a giant world power, but we're going to take back areas that we were sorry we lost at the end of Great Soviet Union collapse. Ashley T98 says, I love ads on an educational stream. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I always forget. Aren't we supposed to schedule them so that I stop talking? I'm really sorry about that, Ashley. I have no idea. I like the Twitch stuff. I have no idea that stuff's happening because I can't see it on my side. But yeah, there's got to be a better way around the commercial stuff. So I'll do my best. When a commercial kicks in next time, somebody in the chat room alert me real quick, and then I'll do a TV timeout so you don't miss stuff. Okay, so this is going to be a brief chat, and I say, Okie Medics has got to pay the power bill somehow. Can't you sign up for free on this if you're like a Amazon Prime subscriber or something like that? I think if you subscribe, which you get free with Amazon Prime, that you don't get commercials anymore. But what the hell do I know? I'm just some poor college professor. Okay, so this is going to be a brief chat about Russia, the rebirth of the bear. Spasibo to a new century, a brand new bear, a brand new Russia. And it's all literally because of one single human being. It is very rare, my friends, very rare in life that we can look at big events, big things happening on planet Earth, that we can definitively, with no consternation, actually point to one single human being and say, were it not for that human being, none of this would be happening. And that is exactly what this whole talk is about today, is the rebirth of the Russian bear as a great world power and as a assertive and perhaps threatening new world power. And it's all because of this one single dude, Vladimir. That would be Vladimir Putin. Oh, and I see some first-time chatters from Sir Yogurt Cup. We're going to see another Russian empire. Sir Yogurt Cup, I think we are witnessing it right now. David KK99 says you have to run them every 30 minutes so they won't automatically run when you click on the stream. Got it. Okay, so commercials every 30 minutes aren't bad, but it's probably more often than that, right? Ashley says Prime is overpriced. I agree, Ashley. First-time chat from H. Muham. H. Muham 8. How likely is a larger invasion, and would it be east of the Dnieper or all of Ukraine? That is the $20,000 question, H. Muhan, which I cannot answer, nor can anyone, not even Vladimir Putin. I don't believe he's made the next decision yet. He has a likely scenario of options in front of him, but he's a fairly cool player. And so he had decided long ago, I believe, that he was going to take these two regions back over. And this is coming from a playbook. He's already done this before. This is the exact same playbook that Russia did 7 years ago to take over the Crimean Peninsula. It's the exact same playbook they played 13 years ago when they took over 2 parts of Georgia. So this isn't even, again, for those of us that watch this isn't that shocking. He's just doing what he keeps doing. But to answer your question, he's a cool player, so he had already intended to do this for sure. The question now becomes, he's letting this ride and going to see what flack Russia will take. And if the heat gets too much, he won't do anything else. If the West's response, if the world response is tepid and no one really does anything, he may indeed decide to press on further. But I don't believe even he has made that decision yet. He's going to let it play out a little bit. Let's see. R Rover C says Prime works for me at home. Okay, that's a Prime thing. H. Muhan says, how juicy are the sanctions going to be, and when are they going to kick in right now, or are we going to wait until a larger invasion? So H. Muhan, I heard President Biden of the United States say earlier today that they were already enacting sanctions against the 2 breakaway republics, which I have not one clue what that means, because there is no one living in the 2 breakaway republics that gives a rat's ass about what the United States is doing. Nor are there any millionaires or billionaires or companies of great note in the 2 breakaway republics. So I don't know who the U.S. and the West is going to sanction in the 2 breakaway republics. There's no one there to sanction. There's plenty of people there, but they're in a war zone, and that's of zero effect. That's the only thing I've heard so far that's definitely going to happen. The real question is, will this be enough for Team West, I'll call them, and you know what that means if you're in my class. Team West, the United States, European allies, and Australia, and a bunch of others. Will Team West use this invasion of eastern Ukraine as enough of an offense to do the real global throwdown of sanctions that they've been promising? And what I mean by that is there is talk of cutting Russian banks out of the global financial system. That's a biggie. It will affect the world, by the way, but it'll really hurt Russia. The other big sanction is that Germany, under much coercion from the United States, has threatened to cut off the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which is a major, huge money-making gas pipeline from Russia to Western Europe that hasn't even started operating yet, but billions of investment in it. That would be a very big deal should the West choose to do it. But I think Vladimir is being fairly, again, cool hand Luke here, cool hand Vlad, and he's doing this little thing. It's just taking part of Ukraine to see if that would be enough to trigger all the bad stuff. I think he's betting it won't, and my money's on him on that bet. I'm like, nah, I don't think that'll be enough. If he then invades all of Ukraine, that would be enough to trigger all the really bad stuff. Putin, Ashley says Putin has been slowly creepy his grubby hands onto all the pies for a long time now. He's just more bold now. Fair assessment, Ashley. Run Ruby for life, great screen name. Do you think the Biden-Putin summit in France will accomplish anything? I do not. Hokey Medic says, can we talk about the cyber attacks a bit and the future with these? We'll get to that, Hokey Medic. And also, do you think Vladimir has a dope screen name when he runs them hacks? Only here for the Plaidcast. Thank you. Great screen name. Just subscribed. Thank you for subscribing. Only here for the Plaidcast. R cover C. By the way, only here for the Plaidcast. That's why I'm on Twitch. I'm here for the Plaidcast too. The Velociraptor rears his ugly head from R cover C. And Hokey Medic says, hashtag Team West for the win. It's a nice sentiment, Hokey Medic. I don't think anybody on Team West feels like they're in the winning column right this second. Sir Yogurt Cup says, I don't know the mind of Vlad, but wouldn't invading places with rich minerals like Kazakhstan make more sense than invading Ukraine first? No. This is the test run. This is the test run for Vladimir Putin of openly and assertively grabbing land from other sovereign states. Even the two previous circumstances of Russia grabbing territory that I mentioned in the last 13 years were kind of covert. They were little bites. They were nibbles. And there was a cover story. This is the first time there's no cover story. I mean, the Russians are saying, these breakaway republics just really want to be part of Russia, but nobody's believing that cover story, not even the Russians. So this is the first bold, we are taking another chunk of land. And let's see what happens. But you're right, Kazakhstan, and they're doing this under the auspices of, historically, this was part of Russia anyway. And there's all these Russians there who want to be part of Russia. So we have this, reason, this glorified reason we're good people. The Russians are good guys, and we're just helping these Russians here. And it used to be part of our territory anyway. Let's see. And then they're thinking, let's see how that plays out. And then they might get much more assertive in Kazakhstan. There are ways of controlling states, by the way, other than outright land grabs. What you're very likely to see, perhaps for the rest of Ukraine, and I would guess certainly for Kazakhstan, is for Russia to work its magic and put in a puppet regime. So they'll allow Kazakhstan to be Kazakhstan, but they'll have some pro-Russian complete dork figurehead who basically is just an arm of Moscow leading the country. Look for that to happen, and probably right soon, if it's not already there. Okay, let's see. From H. Milham, is there opportunity for Erdogan to detach himself from Russia, get back on that F-35 program, get rid of the S-400s? Those are all good questions. I wonder what Recep Erdogan of Turkey is thinking right about now, because he loves Putin. So does Xi Jinping of Russia, Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus, and Erdogan of Turkey. They all love Putin. They're like, that's my role model right there. That's my boy. That's what I'm doing in my country. But Turkey's Erdogan needs to seriously think about that long-term reasoning, because Russia and Turkey have fought many historic wars against each other. And Russia's ambitions are to control the Black Sea and beyond, and Turkey's kind of in the way of that. So I don't know how much in bed Erdogan wants to get with Vladimir Putin, but we'll find out as Erdogan's economy is collapsing around his head too. But I have like 300 slides to get to, so I'll start talking real quick. I'll try to catch up. Let's see if we can get through like 30 slides in less than 5 minutes. I know it's impossible, but let me give it a go so we can get to the kind of stuff so you'll understand more generally some of the references I've already thrown out here. So we're talking about Vlad the Man. And by the way, I might do a whole nother podcast just on this invasion tomorrow. I'm kind of fired up about it, so I can use pieces that I'm going to talk about tonight and do it again tomorrow, just focusing on the invasions, the reconquest of the great Russian Empire, which are occurring in the last 10 years. I could do that if you all want it. So this is a sweeping saga of Putin. We could focus just on the reconquistadors of Russia, the Russian reconquistadors. Just invented the future again. So a man of many talents, many titles, and many moods. You see here Vladimir Putin, Vladimir Putin when he was young, Dadimir Putin when he had a kid, Sadimir, Madimir, and Vladimir Putin. So, like many, he is the most important Vladimir of all of Russia. And Vladimir is a very common name in Russia, but without any doubt, he is the most important current Vladimir of note. But let's make sure you're on the same page about the guy we want to learn about. Because let's play a quick round of Know Your Vladimirs. Because there are plenty of Vladimirs in Russian history. And some of them, for a much longer time than Putin's been alive, have been very historically important Vladimirs. So Putin may be the great, but he isn't the great Vlad. The great Vladimir was actually Vladimir the First. Prince of Novgorod, Grand Prince of Kiev. Hey, Kiev, isn't that the capital of Ukraine? It is. And ruler of the Kievan Rus. Wait a minute. Kievan Rus, isn't that pretty much all the territory that's modern-day Ukraine? It is. The Kievan Rus, 1,000 years ago, was kind of the start of what would become the Russian Empire. And indeed, it did start in what's now modern-day Ukraine. And I'm putting this in, by the way, because I opened with the story of Vladimir Putin saying, oh, by the way, Donetsk and Luhansk, those are historically part of Russia. He can make the claim that all of Ukraine is historically part of Russia because that's where the Russians started. I actually think it's ironic because, to me, the Ukrainians should be saying, oh, well, historically, all of Russia is part of us. We were the first Russian empire, so all of you belong to us, not the other way around. That's where some of this historic claim is coming from. Vladimir the First also was the first to adopt Christianity. Remember, this is 1,000 years ago. And Islam was quite popular in the region right next door. And as the historic legends go, whenever they formed up this first Kievan Rus / early Russian Empire, Vladimir the First, to put it together, was faced with the options. Well, for the state religion, you want this Eastern Orthodoxy, it's this Christian thing, Jesus and stuff, or Islam, Muhammad and Allah. And he was leaning towards Islam, but then he found out, oh, Islam doesn't allow drinking. I guess we're going to be Orthodox Christian. That's perhaps an urban tale, but apparently it's well recorded in history, so there must have been something to it. Now, Putin may be scary, but he isn't the scariest Vlad out there. The scariest Vlad may be Vlad III, a.k.a. Vlad the Impaler, a.k.a. Vlad Dracul, Prince of Wallachia. Just over 550 years ago. The original Dracula was a real human figure named Vladimir. Now, Vladimir Putin also is already an important historical figure before he's even dead. But he isn't yet the most important Vlad historically changing the entire course of Russian history. That would be this Vladimir. Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanovich, a.k.a. Vladimir Lenin, Russian communist revolutionary, politician, political theorist, changed, that whole commie guy, changed everything for Russia from 1917 to 1924, and then promptly kicked the bucket. Had he not kicked the bucket, Russia would be in a very different place today. Now, Putin is an Eastern-leaning leader, but he isn't even the most Eastern Vlad. That would be Vlad I Vostok, which actually isn't even a person. It's the name of a city, one of the biggest easternmost Russian cities, way over there in the east on the Kamchatka Peninsula, or close to it anyway. Vladivostok, a very big, the biggest eastern port for Russia over on the Pacific. Okay, but the Vlad we're talking about, of course, is Ba-Boom. The Vlad of the hour and of the year and of the decade and of this century for Russia, one Vladimir Putin. So I'm sorry, I'm already missing a lot of comments. Ashley 98 says, I'm skeptical any sanctions will really last that long against Russia. I agree. Sorry, it's already scrolling on me. If Russia takes over enough land, they'll likely gain enough commodities to make other states. Yeah, the sanctions against Russia, even if it's worst case scenario, and sorry, we're already skipping to the end of this talk, but Russia will likely survive any sanctions, even the most horrific ones, if they get to that, because what we're seeing is a Chinese-Russian relationship unfolding to really challenge Team West's dominance of planet Earth. And by the way, none of us really think Team West is dominating planet Earth anymore. But Team West financial systems, or economic systems, or communication systems still kind of do. And so what you might see, if the sanctions don't punish Russia enough to make them change soon, you could very well see Russia and China teaming up and saying, we're getting off the US dollar altogether. We're going to start our own international financial situation. And those two countries, if they were to pair up in a very meaningful way, could do that. A lot of people think that China and Russia have always been besties because they're both communist states at one time. Neither one of them is communist anymore, but they used to be communist China and, of course, the great Soviet Union. And so most people who don't know that much about history assume, well, of course, they were always buddies. They were all communist, right? Actually, Russia and China hated each other for the better part of the last half of the 20th century. They didn't get along at all. So what we're seeing now is for the first time ever, really, a warming of the relationship between these two Asian land empires, unlike anything we've seen in history. So we really don't know where this is going yet. First time chatter, thank you for the first time chat from Only here for the podcast. Another lecture on the invasion sounds good to me. Thank you. Ashley says, I still think the photo of Putin with the tanks is hilarious. It is. Creative with their names, aren't they? JMR, Mr. Manolo says, invasion lecture might be needed. Agreed. Muhan says, we have entered a period in history where states will aggressively pursue territorial claims based on historical justifications. Yes, Muhan, that's actually what I'm suggesting. I believe we're back. We're back to the future, meaning this move by Russia is wiping out all of the international standards that have been in place since 1945. One could even argue from 1919, although Hitler kind of threw it out again. But what I mean is, we, for all of your lives, and most of my entire life, and actually for the better part of 100 years, the world has lived by an idea that might no longer makes right. We have an international based system of rules and laws, and we all respect each other's sovereignty. And that's the way that things have been for 70, 80 years. And this is now, Putin in this one move is saying, don't care anymore. China is kind of going down that path as well of like, well, we're taking Taiwan back, and we already took Hong Kong, and we'll take any damn thing we want. So we could be seeing a return to the past. Great powers taking anything they want in complete disregard of any international norms or laws that have been set up in the last 80 years. It really is an interesting time to be alive. All times are really interesting to be alive, but we have taken for granted for, 50 years that we would never return to the old school way of empires just taking whatever they want and crushing weak states. We kind of thought, well, those days are over. Au contraire, mon frère. Vladimir Putin is bringing it on back old school style. And now let's go on to some more. Easily the world leader with the highest nipple exposure of all time, as I like to point out. You will not find more pics of nipples from any other world leader going back to like Attila the Hun. And we didn't even have any pictures of him. Vladimir Putin has spent his entire adult life, at least the last 25 years of it, in a continuous photo shoot of self-promotion. By the way, I'm not even faulting him for it. One could make the same claim for former President Trump. Their whole lives are cultivating a brand, an image, a look, a manliness or coolness, or in Trump's case, like business savvy and power, and I'm in charge, and you're fired, you're fired, you're fired. I'm in charge. I'm emanating power. And Vladimir Putin has done the same thing, but in much more masculine, old school, manly ways. You can see that guy doing everything on planet Earth. Most recently, he's taking it to the next level with historical references to himself as the third Rome. Moscow is the third Rome, maintaining conservative tradition and historic Christian tradition. He's gotten in bed. That's a bad pun. He's gotten cozy with the Orthodox Church as of just the last 5 to 10 years. The Soviet Union was an atheist state. They got rid of all religion. Vladimir Putin himself, I would argue, much like Donald Trump, is very likely an atheist. They believe in raw power above all. And so this move towards, oh no, I'm a good conservative Christian Russian is yet again bolstering a brand and an image that makes him really popular with conservative Russians or religious Russians or just God-fearing Russians, whoever they are. All this is related to Russian national identity. Russia has forever, and Vladimir Putin stresses this nonstop. Russia is neither part of the Western world nor part of the Eastern world. It's Russia. Russia is a core. They like to think of themselves as a core civilization onto themselves. They're not China and they're not Asian. They're not the EU and Europe and the West. They are their own thing. And perhaps leaders of a greater Slavic world is what they're going to start promoting, especially if they take over Ukraine in its entirety. So you want to know the story behind this Putin fellow? More nipple shots. Well, let's get to it. First off, what do you know about him? What would you like to know about him? And here's what I know about him. I'll give just 1 second while I take a sip of something because we're already halfway through this hour and I have 532 slides to go. So what would you like to know about Vladimir Putin? Be specific. Be specific. Is there something specific that you'd like to know? And I'll read out some other people's comments while you add in some more comments. That's a great comment, by the way, about from Muhammad 8 of we entered a period of history where we aggressively pursue territorial claims. Yeah. Our cover C says, I guess we're in English territory now. I agree. Great Britain should reinvade America. Historically, it was theirs. Or wait a minute, the Native Americans should reinvade America. I guess because historically it was theirs. Oh, wait a minute, the dinosaurs should retake over North America because originally it was theirs. You see where I'm going with that comedy. And Al 1024 says we'd be English, French, Spanish, and Dutch territory. Absolutely. Ashley says the historical justifications for taking land are so dumb. It just seems like a really convoluted excuse to take land from other people and cultures who already live there without repercussions. Well said, Ashley. Very well said. Hokey Medics chimes in. CIA took out Lenin just like they took out JFK. Thank you. Thank you for that, Hokey Medic. Of course, the historical flaws there is I don't think there was a CIA back in 1924. But I'm not an American historian. Ashley says China has everything and also has all the support because they benefit too many states to make sanctions worth it, so Russia will be absolutely fine. I agree with that as well. Vikram Tawari up in the hizzle saying what will be the repercussions on global economy. That's an unknown, Vikram. Worst case scenario, sanctions that are being proposed against Russia would ripple out to the entire world economy in a big way. So it's another reason why Vladimir Putin's probably playing this pretty cool and just thinking they're not going to do anything. They're not going to take any pain. They're not going to send in troops to actually defend Ukrainian people. And if they do, that would cause World War III and we'd all die. They're not going to do that. And they're not even going to do the sanction thing because it's going to hurt their economies too, and they know it. I think that's probably the way Putin's looking at this right now. See you all at the draft. Let's see. Ashley points out Israel is created through historic justifications. Yep. Sir Yogurt Cup, to be fair, the only real barrier holding up international standards is common sense. Everything else is fair game where power is involved. Well said, Sir Yogurt Cup. Such eloquent wisdom coming from a yogurt cup. Barbecue time. Says maybe we started by taking Iraq because we felt like it. Yeah, one can easily look, and the Russians do this, as do the Chinese. They look at American transgressions or aggressions or whatever you want to call them into other sovereign states and say, why the United States can't say anything to us. The United States has invaded all these countries. The difference is that the United States, at least for the last century, has invaded countries to liberate and or help them and or fight against communism. and then they leave. And that's hard to dispute. I'm not saying any of these wars the United States got involved in were good. I'm not saying any of them were just. Some of them were, some of them weren't. I'm not saying any of those things, but I think it's indisputable that the United States gets involved in other parts of the planet, but we don't absorb other parts of the planet. The United States doesn't go into Iraq and make it the 51st state. So it rings a little hollow when the Russians or the Chinese try to compare these apples to oranges, or quite frankly, apples to Mercedes-Benz. I mean, these are uncomparable strategies, and the United States could have easily absorbed Iraq, could have easily taken over parts of Latin America, could have easily taken over really any part of a weaker country, but they haven't. And that's the big difference here. Vladimir Putin and China, Vladimir Putin's Russia and Xi Jinping's China are looking to take over territories, period. They're not going in to fight for anything or liberate anybody. They're going because they want the land and the resources and the people on it. So that is different. No judgment call. Although I'll be honest, I don't think it's great to go take over other countries that people perhaps don't want to be part of your country. That's just me. But it's not a judgment call. That's the difference between American involvement and Russian and Chinese involvement in the world here in the 21st century. First time chatter. Thanks for first time chatting. Hayamez. Hayamez says, hasn't Russia spent the last decade making themselves sanction proof? That's a decent way to look at it too. They also produce a hell ton of hydrocarbons. So until the world gets off oil, the world needs Russia more than Russia needs the world when it comes to energy. There's just no getting around that. So they're a little bit recession proof in that sense. Mr. Incredible Meme, Russia is Russia. Muhan says, can you talk a little more how this is going to affect what happens in Russia when Putin leaves? He's 69 and likely won't be around for another 20 years. Au contraire, Muhan. He ain't going anywhere. He will live to be 90, maybe 100, and he will be in power. I believe Vladimir Putin will be in power for the rest of my life. I'm younger than him. I don't see him going anywhere for 2 decades solid. For 1 decade without batting an eye, 2 decades solid, I think he's got it. I think he's just hitting his mid-stride as the leader of Russia right now. He's just a middle-aged president when it comes to Russia. He'll be there for another 20. But you're right, if he were to suddenly, if his heart exploded, Russia would be in trouble. They put all their eggs in a strong leader basket, and that's all fine and good as long as the strong leader's alive and leading well. But when the strong leader goes, no one can ever fill his shoes. History just repeats itself. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, as the old saying goes. And everyone has seen this story before, and we'll see it again. I don't know what its astro sign means. Let's see. Astro sign, who heard him? Views on Russian military potential. First time chatter from Sammy Bear. Welcome, Sammy Bear. Always look forward to hearing your analysis. SAS Fall 15. I know who Sammy is then. Welcome back, Sammy. Hokey Medic says, what is Russia's current currency? Is Putin a business money man or more of a politician? Would he be about cryptocurrency called vodka coin? Brilliant, Hokey Medic. I don't even need to lecture. I can just read you guys' comments and we're all good here. Brilliant, Hokey Medic. I will cut to the chase on the heart of your question. Is Putin a money man? He was not a businessman. At some point, we'll actually get to this lecture, and I'll talk about his background. He's a government worker, tried and true from the get-go. He's a government man, KGB man originally. However, I'm saying he's not a money man. Donald Trump spent his life making money. Well, he inherited a bunch and then made a little bit more, I guess. But Vlad was not a business person, but he is easily the richest human in Russia. It's possible he's the richest human alive. It's very hard because of the murkiness of Russian society. It's very hard to tell how much money he's siphoned off or been given, quite frankly. And there is corruption is in all governments. I'm not picking on Russia. It's a little bit more endemic in Russia. organized crime, the oligarchs. The world of Russian business is just different than America, although not that different. And so most historians, most people that study this guy, everyone agrees he's worth billions. We just are not sure how much, how he got it, where it's at. We don't know, and we're likely to never know. So he ain't a money man, but he's got money, man. Only here for the podcast, aside from prominent ministers like Lavrov, whoo, that's one cool hand, Luke too. Lavrov, the foreign minister, is it known whether he has the equivalent of a right-hand man or who constitutes his innermost circle? He probably has a couple right-hand men. I don't know that Lavrov is a right-hand man. He is the foreign minister, but they've been in lockstep for 20 years. So Lavrov's cool. He's in the inner circle, but I don't know the answer to that. Only here for the podcast. I don't know if he has a right-hand man. I would be surprised if he did. He holds his cards close to his chest, even with his inner circle. Matt Growl in the house says, reminds me of the German invasion of Rhineland, which was justified because it was ethnically German. Agreed, Matt Growl. Well said. Historically, well placed. First time chatter from Cameron Lucy. As of right now, how is his relationship with the United States? Why is Putin riding a pug? Because Putin can ride a pug, Ashley. That's why Putin's riding a pug. Okay. Let's get to it and do it. Who is this Putin fellow? KGB operative, a president, a prime minister, a president again, and the baddest ass of the baddest asses of all of planet Earth, even before his recent invasions. If you're looking at that picture and thinking, is that a real tiger that he has his hands on? It is. He shot that tiger with a tranquilizer dart because he likes tigers. But he is a master of all manly sports. Trained in judo his whole adult life. He can play every single manly man sport there is. Not curling. He plays hockey. He's an avid fisherman, an avid hunter, an avid judo guy, an avid scuba diver, a skydiver. He knows how to fly jets. He knows he's a master of all weapons. He can kill you with 5,000 different weapons, all the weapons known to mankind. He knows how to assemble them, disassemble them, reassemble them, blindfolded, and shoot a polar bear in the head from 5,000 feet away. He is the man. In Soviet Russia, President assassinate you. He is the master of all manly vehicles. You will see pictures of Putin in every boat ever made, including submarines, submersibles, in everything that's ever been in the air, including, I don't even call that little thing with the crane. What is that? It's like a hello gyrocopter. It's a gyrocopter. I've seen him on hand gliders, gyrocopters, motorcycles, driving 18-wheelers, flying jet planes. He's done everything. And of course, he's a master of all animals because animals love manly men. I can't even, I start to run out of juice too early. Too early on here. Jaime says Ukraine is Russian Liebschraum. Again, well said from the chat room. Jaime, very well said. I've been thinking of the Liebschraum thing, this entire buildup on the Ukrainian border. This is our historic land, and there's historic Russians there, and we have to have this land for the heart of the country. But master of all animals, this is just literally like me looking on the internet for 2 seconds to find animal pictures. There's just too many of them, including this one. This is real news, all right? This actually never happened. He never rode a great white. But if anybody could do it, if my money was on anybody doing it, it'd be Vladimir Putin. He is now a Russian hero, a conservative icon worldwide. For those of you that are making test questions, sorry, I probably haven't had only about 1,000 good test questions so far. But here's one for sure. This is a new era for Putin on the planet because even here in the United States, for the first time in my lifetime, and probably one would have to say for 100 years, There are now conservative elements of the United States of America. The Fox News folks, Tucker Carlson, has been openly not critical of Vladimir Putin, praising him. For the first time, this is the test question I'm trying to think about crafting, and that I want you all who just want to be smarter to understand is, you have never in American history heard people talk about the leader of Russia as a great guy. And that maybe the Russians taking over territories, well, they deserve it. It's theirs. I'm not saying this because I'm shocked and enraged that conservative, ultra-conservative right-wing people in America love Putin. That doesn't shock me or enrage me. It's just kind of, it's weird. It's new. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's never happened before. Russia has been a historic Cold War enemy of the United States. It looks like an imperial power. It's behaved like an imperial power. When they were communist, the United States spent billions and billions and billions of dollars to stop them. They were the evil empire, as described by Ronald Reagan, one of the most worshipped conservatives in American history, hated the Russians. And here we are, 30 years later, and the same conservatives that love Reagan love the president of Russia just as much. It's very intriguing. This has never happened before. And it's because he has become a conservative icon on planet Earth. And I won't just say ultra right wing, but people on the right fringe of political systems anywhere, and just folks that are conservative. You don't have to be a right winger to be conservative, but traditionalist, really religious people who believe in the old ways and old school and wanting us to get back to when America was great again. They really love this guy, and it is fascinating. So, conservative icon globally. Remember when I said he was embracing religion? Again, it's part of the image. Ardent nationalist, I should say, which is another reason he's become a conservative icon worldwide. So he's all about make Russia great again, make Russia proud again, put the Russian state back together again. We're going to make Russia a power again. And he has done it, and done it very well. So again, it's part of the reason why the Tucker Carlsons and others, I just say Fox News, I don't know all the people, but the folks in America that look at this guy as now a hero, when he used to be a villain to the United States 20 or 30 years ago. Part of that is because he is a pro-nationalist, my country first, just the same way that the MAGA folks are. And I don't care what your political affiliation is. You know, I'm always just trying to teach you what's going on in the wider world. That's why this guy is becoming beloved by conservatives and ardent nationalists and right-wingers all over planet Earth, despite what kind of country they're in, democracy or authoritarian. Idol of authoritarians worldwide, I already suggested. Xi Jinping, Recep Erdogan, Donald Trump. Folks who want to absorb all power to themselves look at this guy and they're like, he's my hero. That's exactly what I want to do in my country. I want to get rid of everyone who disagrees with me. I want to make all the decisions. I want to be the manly man hero in charge of everything. Now, whether anyone can pull that off, I think it's extremely doubtful, because Putin is a kind of a one of a kind, and he was the right man at the right time for where Russia was. Donald Trump may become president again in the United States, but he's never going to save the country because the country wasn't lost, if that makes any sense. There are people that disagree with how policy is conducted in the United States, but Russia was decimated and destroyed, and this guy brought them back to glory. No other leader around can claim that. Recep Erdogan's not bringing Turkey back to glory. Xi Jinping, quite frankly, to me is one of the most, I won't say goofball, but Xi Jinping of China has spent his last decade trying to do all the stuff Vladimir Putin did, building this image. I am the great savior of China. I'm the greatest Chinese person ever. Change all the history books. Everyone look at me. I have saved China. And that is simply not the case. If you know Chinese history, and if you know modern Chinese history, China has been on the upward swing for 40 years. And there's been several, if not many, really great Chinese leaders that have helped that on its path. So for some guy to come in at the end and be like, I did all this, I'm like, I don't really respect Xi Jinping as much. Vladimir Putin can make that claim. Without me, this is all nothing. That's probably true. Okay? So, idol authoritarians worldwide. Brofest love recipient of Donald Trump. If you remember Donald Trump's first couple years in office, making Russia great again. He has done all of that and a whole lot more. Sorry, I know there's been a lot of chats. Our cover C says almost sounds like Boris is a man crush on Manly Man Putin. I hype it up. I respect the guy. I think if I was a Russian, I would have a man crush on him. But I'm not. And I'm one of those guys. I kind of like this thing called freedom. I kind of still like democracy. So I can't say that I would move to Russia because I think he's so awesome. I would not. And I really wouldn't want a leader like him in America. But if I was a Russian, yes. That's why his popularity is typically 70, 80, 90%. This is with the people, not just the lackeys. Let's see. Wonder if he's a photographer, follow him around to get all his best angles. Absolutely, he does. Let's see. First time chatter. Hooked on Phonics. Hooked on Phonics. Oh, I haven't heard that forever. Hooked on Phonics. Great screen name. Took World Region and Geography 1 10 years ago. So happy I found this channel. Keep up the great work, Professor. Thank you, Hooked on Phonics. Great screen name. Sir Yogurt Cup. It's definitely weird to see someone American praising our rivals in Russia when we're supposed to be ignorant of their success. I'm not sure which way to take that, Sir Yogurt Cup. I'm not really. I'm praising his success in terms of he is being successful at what his vision for Russia. Don't interpret that as I think it's successful, that I'm proud of him, or I think he is a good or great person. I'm saying when you look at the great swath of history and just even modern history, he has put Russia on a path created by him and perhaps his inner circle, and they are being very successful at that path. Very successful. First time chatter from Hooky Goose. Hooky Goose says, is there a group me for this course? Katie, have you already answered that one? Okay. Putin makes good memes. I agree. Putin definitely uses Reddit. Tease Arisa says, for all these pictures, it looks like Putin has a lot of free time. I think he probably works 20-hour days, and these are photos taken over the course of 20 to 25 years. So again, it's like running a TV show. It's a cultivated brand image, and there's a lot of people working for him to make sure that it's working. First time chatter. Thanks for the first time chat from KDB. Don Skin. I can't pronounce that. But thanks for the first time chat, KDB. And Hokey Goose wants on the Discord link. Okay, so you guys covering that. Putin reminds me of Caesar from the video game Fallout. I don't even know what that is, but I agree. Let's see. Propaganda, says Ashley. Yep. What is marketing besides propaganda? Isn't all marketing for any company a propaganda to tell you how great that company is, or a person, or the country, or a policy? Bedtime for working class folks from Hokey Medic. So good night, everybody. Thanks, Hokey Medic. And to live, I like to live without fear of one wrong move or word will get me jailed or killed. Exactly, Ashley. That's kind of why I still like our country, even though people are kind of down on it right now. Everybody who says, oh, I wish we had one definitive, strong person in charge that could make all decisions and make everything great. I'm like, hell no, I don't. Because I can almost assure you I won't agree with half the shit that person says. Anyone who thinks they're right all the time, I don't want them in charge of anything. Barbecue Time says, is it going well for Russia other than the oil and gas sector? Yes, Barbecue Time. Everything is going right for Russia right now. But I should get back to the lecture because I have 5,000 more slides to go. Okay. And it's already been an hour? How is this possible? All right. He was Time Man of the Year. Actually, he might have made the Time cover of Person of the Year more than once at this point. I think that was from 1999. So Man of the Century for Russia. He is a legend. And I do not throw out that term lightly. First time chatter from Low Key Puppy Monkey Baby. Thanks for tuning in. He is a living legend, and I don't say that lightly. What that means is Most people are not giving the legend status until years, decades, or centuries after they die. Most people who actually affect history in a big way or create some great work of art are really never as highly valued in life as they are after they leave. And so it's very rare that we can look at a human and be like, oh no, that person, it will go down in the history books. 1,000 years from now, people will be reading about this guy in the history books, about how he changed world history and Russian history specifically. With no doubt, 100, 1,000 years from now, he is a legend and has affected that much. No offense to Americans or conservatives or Republicans. I cannot say that 1,000 years from now, Donald Trump would get a lot of play in history books. There'll certainly be a blip about him, but when I say legend, I mean changing the course of big events in a big way. And this guy, he ain't even dead yet, and he's already ascribed that status. How the heck did he get this status, then, is the question. Okay. Well, to understand the current Putin cult of personality, you have to put it in the context of Russian history. Some of this stuff I've talked about in previous lectures, and we're already out of time for this hour, so I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, okay? Russian rulers in rapid review, as I like to say, or a century-long series of unfortunate events. I forget I create these things. That's quite clever. Whenever I've done Russian lectures in the past, well said, by the way, Ashley, American politics is forgettable in the long term, pretty much. Whenever I've given Russian lectures in the past, really up to about 15 years ago, it was just one long sad story. And this, no offense to Russians, I think they would agree. I would just be like, yes, and then this happened, and it was an unfortunate event. And then things got worse. And then you go on to the next century, and then things got worse. So this is the first time that I'll give a lecture and be like, and then things got way better. All right. So for starters, Russia grew territorially and politically into a premier world power. Only since about 1300, it was controlled. I'm not even going far enough back to show you that the city called Kiev, which is in modern-day Ukraine, was actually the epicenter of the first Russian Empire, the Kievan Rus that I referenced earlier with Vladimir I. And then it kind of got pushed out of the what's now Ukraine by the Golden Horde, the Tartars, the Mongol era. They were a subservient state to the Mongols. They regrouped in this area called Moscow. Basically, they ran into the woods because it was easier to defend Moscow because it was heavily wooded and in between some rivers. But from there, they threw off the Mongol yoke in 1462 and expanded. By 1500, they expanded further north. By 1600, they expanded further south under one Ivan the Terrible. Didn't even talk about that dude yet. Ivan IV, the Terrible. And then over the course of the next couple hundred years, under great leaders like Catherine the Great and Peter the Great, they really took over the largest swath of Asia, building the greatest land empire in the current era. Perhaps only rivaled by the Mongol Empire at its height. Okay, now I'm just skipping way forward to someone says, what does it take to be known as the Terrible? Bashing in your eldest son's head with a mace. I think for starters, there was a lot of other things he did. The IFOSB. So even when we get into, skip over all the old history over to library books. Well played, Jaimes. If we skip over all the old history and just be like, okay, well, let's catch up to today's world. What was going on in Russia? So it's a huge, big land empire. Well, it historically is a cold, bitter, hard life for most Russians. It is a very top, politically and economically speaking, top-heavy system. It's a feudal system. That is, there's a bunch of aristocrats. There's the politicians, the church, and the aristocrats who own 99% of everything. And then there's everybody else who are peons, peasants, serfs. And they worked on the land. They were allowed to work on the land in return for not being killed. The peasant emancipation of 1861, for those of you that are history buffs, 1861, that's when the American Civil War started to make black Americans equal and get rid of slavery in our country. It's the same year that the Russians passed an Emancipation Proclamation to free just the Russian people. Does that make sense? This wasn't, it was a group of slaves from another place. These are Russian peasants who they had to have an edict to come out and say, by the way, you're equal. You're actually humans. You're not under the rule of the landlord. And that's way late in the game. 1861, Europe has been, freed from the feudal system for centuries at this point. Then, of course, they have the Romanovs take over, the czars. And czar is a bastardized term for Caesar. So they always hearken back to the Roman era. They played upon that we are legitimate. And so we have a czar that's in charge, like a king. And the Romanovs took over from 1613 and ruled all the way to 1917. So 1917, Russia still had a king who was all powerful. Think about how late in the game that is. Most of the European places that even had figurehead kings and queens at that point, they were figureheads. Most of the states had gotten rid of kings and queens altogether. All of Latin America and all of the Americas, the whole Western Hemisphere didn't have kings and queens. Even China didn't have a king or queen. They threw out their emperor at this point. Most of the world had gotten past this. Not Russia. They still had a king who was all powerful and controlled everything. So this feudal monarchy state was extremely stagnant, and it really, because of the stagnation and internal corruption, they were way behind. They were technologically behind. They were economically behind. They were politically behind. Russia in 1917 was just going nowhere. It was the old man of Europe. Even the Europeans didn't really want to form up, alliances with them because they're like, what good is that? These people are so backwards, they're of no value. And then, of course, coming into the modern era, Russia is a laggard, as I just suggested. And these are now real photos, because, cameras were invented back in the 1860s and 1870s. So these are actual photos of what was like for Russia in like 1920 or 1910. So a political, economic, technological laggard. And then things took a turn for the worse. Tsar Nicholas II, the last of the line, the Romanov line, was a total inept goober. Lost the war to Japan, lost World War I, which he entered under the advice of Rasputin, the Mad Monk. Hey, isn't there a new Kingsman? There's a new Kingsman movie out where Rasputin is the bad guy. So it must be historically set in World War I, pre-World War I. Rasputin talked Tsar Nicholas into joining the war and actually going to the front line himself. That is, Rasputin said, hey, you should go get on a white horse and go fight Germans. And he did. So they lost so badly, they abdicated a bunch of land. They were like, we're just getting out of World War I. And this set the stage, by the way, I'm skipping over a bunch of Russian history where they put down a bunch of internal revolts. They put down workers' marches. They shot people in bloody revolutions. Anybody that tried to raise their head to try to change Russian society was crushed. So all of this is building into the unhappiness in general in Russia. And he had to abdicate the throne. He just basically quit in 1917 or be killed. Oversaw the Russian Empire go from being one of the foremost great powers of Eurasia to an economic and military collapse. And then things took a turn for the worse, because then this next Vladimir took over, Vladimir Lenin. And I say took a turn for the worse. I can't really judge it. I'm not really that much of a armchair historian to say if life got way better for Russian people under Vladimir Lenin, because he just started that whole communist experience. Because things sucked so bad for the previous 100, 200, 300 years in Russia. Give it just 100 years. That's one of the reasons why they overthrew the whole Russian family and eventually shot them all, by the way. And the Russians were receptive to a whole new system, which Vladimir Lenin and his commie crew took over. When Vladimir Lenin took over, this sparked a civil war between the traditionalists and the communists who wanted to take the country in a new direction. That was really bloody. By the way, a huge famine occurred in 1919 and 1921 during these civil wars and killed a bunch of people. And by the way, a bunch of people had already died in World War I itself. So, I mean, Russian history is just hard scrabble. But he was taking the country in a new direction. And Then he died. Just as they were starting to move, got past the Civil War and was starting to put their house in order, they died. And then things took a turn for the worse. Because then for the next 50 years, not even that, 25 years, Russia was balling with Stalin. That is the now founded USSR, the Great Soviet Union experiment, was taken over by this strong man who wanted to make Soviet Union great again, but it never existed, so he was just making great for first time. And he was kind of a psychopath. Sorry, Russians who really love him. He was a total psychopath, strong man in charge, 24 to 53. Purged out all political opponents, threw people in gulag, purged out whole ethnic groups in the Soviet Union that were too uppity. So let's say the Georgians or the Chechens didn't want to be part of the Soviet Union, and maybe there was political protest there. He would physically move 1 or 2 million Chechens to the other side of Siberia from the Chechen state they grew up in. He would move people around. The thing called the Red Terror was a purge where he literally just killed everyone who was ever perceived as an enemy of him or an enemy of the state. Anyone who ever spoke a harsh word about him, kill them, kill their wife, kill their kids, kill their cats and dogs, kill the neighbors living next door to them, kill them all. I mean, perhaps, and unique to the Ukrainian story, is that he was responsible for killing anywhere from 2 to 5 million Ukrainians who didn't want to be part of Great Soviet Union, so he salted the fields and starved them to death. Yeah, this is the Ukraine that Vladimir Putin just said is historically part of us. So that's some tension, so to speak. It's hard to say. I've seen numbers as low as 10 million and numbers as high as 40 to 50 million people that died during Stalin's reign. Yeah, let's say conservatively 10 million, because even that's just scary enough. So, not a great time to be a great Soviet Union, or was it? Because he helped win World War II. The Russians did help win with the Allies, beat back the Nazis, win World War II, and then entrenched in that whole Cold War thing, commies versus the West. In America, you break law. In Soviet Russia, law breaks you, from Stalin. How to make everyone happy? Kill all those being unhappy in Soviet Russia. Okay. But, the point I was trying to get to, even though I've now said all these horrific things about great leader Stalin, he did oversee a period of rapid industrialization of Russia, Soviet Union, whichever. He oversaw industrialization, a modernization, technological leap forward in a huge way. Try to keep this in mind. Seriously, it feels like a test question somehow too. In one leader's span, okay, under Stalin, when he took over power, most people were still peasants and growing beets. By the time Stalin left power, because he died, they were launching satellites into space. Just think about that in a 20 or 30 year run. I mean, they were winning the space race for a while in the 60s. So that is what now, in hindsight of history, people look at Stalin for all of his abuses and all of his psychotic tendencies and all of the deaths. People now look back fondly on him from Russia and say, but he got our country in order. He got our mojo back on. He helped win a world war. He defeated Nazism from our side. Hitler was going to take over Soviet Union. Without Stalin and a strong Russian state, that would have happened. So from a Russian perspective, they won World War II. They beat back the Nazis. They got their mojo on. They got an advanced technological economy and got them Sputnik ready to be in a position of countering, not just countering, but leading the space race against the United States. And more importantly, being the world power next to the United States. There were only 2 world powers when Stalin died: Soviet Union and the United States. And again, all that happened in just 30 years. It's incredible when you think about it. So, hearkening back, yeah, it's one of the reasons why Stalin is routinely voted as one of the most popular leaders of Russia of all time. In fact, for at least a decade or two now, he has ranked number one in Russian polls of greatest Russian leader. He's been number one. Putin's been number two. That'll probably change here after this current invasion. For Russians, Stalin is still the most outstanding figure in world history, followed closely by Putin. That was a story from 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. Actually, it says right there, 2014. That survey is conducted every year, and the results have not changed for quite some time. Okay. Well said. Only here for the podcast. Some similarities with how Chinese people view Mao. Yes. Although even Stalin oversaw a greater positive transformation of Soviet/Russian society than Mao did. Mao wanted China to do the same thing that the Soviet Union did. His policies were just terrible. And they ended up setting China back. It was the people that came after Mao that actually put China on its current course of success. But you're right, people look fondly back on Mao for the things he did do right, which is to put China's house in order and have a central government again, take back control of the state from foreign invaders. Okay. Putin is closing in on Stalin as the greatest person in Russian history, according to Russians. Okay. Then things took a turn for the worse. And that is 1985, 1991, this guy named Gorby, sees that since Stalin's death, and even during Stalin's time, there was great corruption within the society. It's very top-down. The drive to compete with the United States was bankrupting Soviet Union. The economic system known as communism is an abject failure every time it's tried. So you have corruption, a failed political and economic ideology, people being impoverished, trying to keep up as the world power, trying to compete with the United States, an overextension. They were involved in a war in Afghanistan. Go figure, didn't work out well for them. So all of these things stack up, and the Soviet Union is stagnating now, much the same way that Russian society was stagnating in the 19-teens before the Communist Revolution even started. So by late 1980s, this guy came into power. He knows the system is sucking. He just says, we can't keep up with the United States anymore. We're going to open up glasnost and perestroika. We're going to open things up. We're going to try to change. The countries in Eastern Europe that don't want to be part of Soviet Union, you can go. In fact, we're leaving East Berlin. We're leaving East Germany. 1989 is the fall of the wall, the beginning of the end of the Soviet Empire. And by 1991, it completely dissolved. They themselves signed it away. Under Gorbachev, they said, look, anybody that doesn't want to be part of Russia, you don't have to be part of Russia. And all the countries went away. All those countries, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Georgia, all said we'd like to go our own way at this point. And that's exactly what happened. So just in Eastern Europe, during the Soviet Union, you see over here, they controlled all the way up into parts of what is now Germany, Romania, Bulgaria, all of Ukraine, Belarus. And then by 1991, they controlled none of that. This, in Putin's eyes, is a great historic wrong that he is seeking to correct. Now, whether he has ambitions to take over all of Eastern Europe, very doubtful. But he at least wants to take back over the areas closest to Russia, and that's why he's carving out the eastern side of Ukraine for now. And by the way, they could absorb Belarus tomorrow if they wanted to, and the people of Belarus could do nothing about it. And quite frankly, no one in Europe would care much about it either, because Belarus is run by a dictator who's a puppet of Putin's. So Belarus pretty much already is Russia. And now he's carving off parts of Eastern Europe. Eastern Ukraine. The question will become, what does he do with Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, if anything? That's the real test. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because then things took a turn for the worse. After Russia lost the Cold War, crashed and burned, they were economically bankrupt, politically bankrupt. They were the big loser. They were the loser of the Cold War. Losers! But they became free, so they became a democracy, and then things took a turn for the worse because they voted this dude in. Boris Yeltsin drinks away the rest of the respect and credibility that Russia had was in power for pretty much a decade. It was the Wild West of capitalism. All the resources were stolen by rich people, oligarchs. There was crony capitalism, massive corruption, territorial secession. And this guy was overseeing it, trying to be a Western-styled Democrat, but was a booze hound. And hey, I'm a booze hound with the best of them, but I don't lead a country. So this is actually a true story. This guy got so drunk one time, he was flying to Ireland for a head of state to head of state meeting with the Irish leader. And by the time they got to the airport in Ireland, he was so drunk they could not physically carry him off the plane. So they sat on the tarmac for 3 or 4 hours till he got sobered up and they knew he wasn't dying, and they flew home. That was the leader of Russia for the 90s. And so it just didn't get much better. But this is actually, that's right. I'm sorry, Yeltsin. But, and now we're getting back to the story, just before Boris Yeltsin quits, because he's so unpopular and things are getting way worse, corruption's way worse, the public is not getting any services, healthcare has collapsed, no one's collecting taxes, it's just a shit show in Russia. So as if it couldn't get any worse by the time the Soviet Union collapsed, 10 years later, it was worse. But right before he quit, he was looking around for someone to replace him. And he had an inner circle. He had all these people around him, his cohorts and colleagues. And there were several people that were assumed to be going to take over who were in the government, like his vice president and shit. However, he didn't do that. He met this dude. 1999, a complete unknown named Vladimir Putin is appointed as the prime minister out of the blue. Out of the blue. He was formerly, I think, the governor. Not the governor, like the mayor of St. Petersburg. Maybe I'm getting ahead of my own slides. But he was the hand-picked successor to Boris Yeltsin, Russia's first elected president after the demise of the Soviet Union. And then 1 year after that, after appointing Vladimir Putin, less than a year later, Yeltsin just got on TV and said, by the way, I quit. Here's your new president. His name's Vladimir Putin. That's how Vladimir Putin first took power. All right, we all up to speed? That was 1991, 22 years ago. He's been in power ever since. Appointed as prime minister, assumed the presidency, and then later was elected to it multiple times. Okay, so now we're getting to the potent period. And this is the first time we can now say, oh, okay, well, things actually don't take a turn for the worse for Russia. Things now start to improve. We are now fully prepped to understand the Putin period. 20th century recap. Remember, Russia that Putin inherited in 1991. They went from a laggard kingdom for 200 or 300 years that they lost. They lost World War I. They were stagnated. They overthrew the Tsar. They went through a post-war period of crap. Then they had Stalin. He improved things for a bit, but then they ended up losing the Cold War. Ideological crash, corruption, dissolution. Everything sucks. Then the Yeltsin drinks away the rest. Things are not good when this unknown dude takes power. And I could actually just stop right there and be like, and where's Russia at today? Where's Russia at today? 22 years later, it's hard to dispute this one human being has done quite a lot for Russia. Again, there's no fanboying here, no man crushing. I just look at the bigger picture and be like, wow, this guy has meant a tremendous amount for the average Russian, for Russia as a country, for Russia as an empire, for Russia as a world power that he, I think this week, can reclaim a title to. So, Ashley says, wait, did Putin become president in 1991 or 1999? 1999. Boris Yeltsin became president in 1991. Boris Yeltsin was president until 1999 and then handed the reins to Vladimir Putin in 1999. VT Scrodger says, UN Emergency Council meeting will begin in 20 minutes on Ukraine, Russia crisis. The meeting will be chaired by Russia, who currently holds the presidency of the Security Council. Yes, you could go tune into that, but I can tell you how it ends, with somebody banging a gavel and nobody doing anything. So everybody will have something to say about it, but nothing's really going to happen. I know R-Cover C, it's cool. It does appear that I was man-crushing them on the opening slides, though. Okay. 21st century will prove to be much better for a great Russian power than the previous century was. So, rise of Vlad the Magnificent. It's already like 9:20, so let me get through some of his early life, and maybe we'll cut it. I mean, I got a ways to go. Maybe I'll fold this into... Let's do that. I will get to where he starts absorbing other nations in this lecture, and then we'll pick up there tomorrow and talk just about that. How about that, everybody? We'll talk just about Russia from, say, 2008 and forward. But let me get there. Yeah, I wasn't kidding. I have 500 more slides to go. So, humble beginnings for our main man, Putin. In the 1980s, again, he came, I won't say he came from poverty, but he did not come from money. He did not come from a fancy family. He wasn't part of the aristocratic class. He wasn't part of the political class. He was not part of the business class. He is a full-on blue-collar worker of no great account growing up, and he joined the government or the military early on, and that's usually a sign too. You come from humble roots, you don't have any money, one of your options is the military. None of his biographers that I've read ever even suggested that he was that driven as a youth. He didn't join the military because he had ambitions of becoming Joseph Stalin. He just needed a job. So humble beginnings in military, then as a government worker, folded into the KGB, was a KGB operative into his early adult life, operating in, of all places, East Germany. So he was way over in the front lines of the Soviet Union's empires, close to Europe. He probably only was less than a decade in the KGB before 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall. He was in Germany for that. So here's a guy, proud Russian, or perhaps he's building into becoming a proud Russian, who was all about his work in the KGB, and he's seeing in front of him, literally witnessing the Soviet Union collapse. The ideology that he believed in and was working for collapsing in front of his eyes. He has, on multiple occasions in the past, said that the collapse of the USSR was the worst geopolitical catastrophe of the entire century. Of course, he's saying that from a Russian perspective, and of course, that's understandable from a Russian perspective. But now, people are taking that with a whole new grain of salt now that he's perhaps rebuilding that Soviet Union. So, saw the collapse, was there in Germany for the fall of the wall. I don't know if he personally witnessed that or not, but he was working there when all of this was happening. 1991, as the Soviet Union goes away, he became a deputy mayor of St. Petersburg, so must have made some connections in the military. Maybe some connections with the mafia. It's hard to say. Things are nebulous. But somebody knew somebody to get him a job as a deputy mayor of St. Petersburg. Remember, this is an era that I've now described, the 90s, as the Wild West of capitalism. Everything's being grabbed. Putin certainly helped grease the wheels of this process, or benefited from wheels being greased, of knowing people in the right places, right? And he started building powerful allies within this new system. And again, he's there at the beginning of this, as the Russian state assets are being divvied up and basically stolen from the state. Some of it mafia, more a group we call the oligarchs, super rich guys who ended up taking over the Russian oil industry, just like, oh, cool, that's mine now, and I get to take all the money from this. Whereas it used to be state-owned, and the state got the money from it. So a lot of that was going on at the time. And I'm not saying he was a corrupt person that had something to do with this. I'm saying he certainly benefited from being a government worker and knowing what was happening at the time. And people have said, biographers have said, and he started making some insider ties early on in the 90s too, with some people that ended up making lots of money. Okay? From 2000 to the present, behind the scenes from being the scene. So deputy mayor of St. Petersburg, whatever. What's that mean? Not much. But St. Petersburg is a big, important city, second most important city after Moscow, probably, of Russia. And so he just was kind of quietly working in the background. And then now I've filled you in with a little bit of the blanks. For reasons I still don't understand, he caught the eye of Boris Yeltsin, who appointed him as the prime minister. Could have been because Putin was an outsider, was not part of the inner circle that was largely seen as corrupt. Maybe it actually had everything to do with corruption. Maybe some people behind the scenes said, hey, Yeltsin, this guy is part of the team. He already knows what's up. You're going to appoint him. I don't know. I'm speculating now. But it's really weird how you pick someone from obscurity to become the prime minister of a country. So, becomes the prime minister. Same year he's appointed prime minister. There's attacks on the border, bombings in Russia, and this is Chechnya we're talking about. And Putin launches a war against Chechnya, which was the second Chechen war. I specifically mentioned Chechens earlier when I said Joseph Stalin may have uprooted several 100,000 or several million Chechens and moved them to Siberia. The Chechen state has always chafed under Russian rule. The Chechen people have not particularly wanted to ever be a part of Russia forever. And they're also mostly Islamic. So there's a cultural clash. They're ethnically not Russians. They're religiously not Orthodox. And all of these states along the border here between Russia and Georgia and Azerbaijan, all of these states have had on again, off again kind of independence movements. Several of them wanted to become independent when the Soviet Union collapsed, but they were small enough they didn't get that chance. So there were independence movements within Chechnya and Dagestan and South Ossetia, or North Ossetia, and so the Russian military had to keep getting involved. They already had fought one war in the mid-90s, 1994 to be exact, and it was, I won't say it was a loss for the Russian army, but they never really got it under control. It was a guerrilla warfare situation that the Russian army never really got a hold of. And so when Putin got into power, he starts a second Chechen war, and he does it with authority. And with authority, I mean, he sends the entire Russian army, which was, by the way, bankrupt and corrupt. But somehow he starts to restore order in the military early on. And with authority, I'm just now flipping through slides. Here we go. With authority, then starts taking Chechen back under control. I don't know why I have so many slides of this place. Oh, it's really mountainous. Okay. That's why it was a guerrilla campaign that was successful for so long, because it's a very mountainous area, easily defended, hard to move tanks in and around it. And so the local warlords and the local guerrillas, for a time, were beating back the Russian army. But that all changes when Vladimir Putin gets in charge. So from September 1999, Putin launches an extremely aggressive second Chechen war against this uprising. I won't say there's mass casualties, but it's decisive. It's very decisive. It's successful, by the way. And so he's only been in office 6 to 8 months, and already his approval rating starts to go up. People had no idea who the hell this guy was at the beginning of 1999, but now somehow he rallied the Russian military and won a war against this Chechen group, which had been sending terrorists into Russia and blowing stuff up. So approval rating jumps from 2% to 45% in his first year in office, and it will never go anywhere but up from there, right on up to this week. So he starts as prime minister, then president to prime minister to president. What do I mean by that? As I suggested, he's appointed prime minister in 1999. Appointed prime minister. But they go ahead and hold elections because now he's popular. He beat the Chechens. He beat terrorism. And so in the election of 2000, it actually makes it official. He did win that election, and he is now the legitimate president of Russia right there in the year 2000. He appears on television frequently, preaching his vision of a strong, internationally respected Russia. Make Russia great again. Does that sound familiar at all to anybody? Make great Russia great again. And his popularity grows. He's seen as a definitive strongman that is getting things done. And when he's on TV, he rails against corruption. He says, I'm going to clean up corruption. We're going to go after crooked cops and crooked military folks and crooked business people, and we're going to beat back the influence of the mob. I'm also going to crush any terrorism that occurs, and there was still lots of terrorism occurring. So again, you look at this guy from a Russian perspective, and people are really liking what they see, and his popularity just keeps kind of growing. I mentioned there was many terrorist attacks. Sometimes terrorist attacks can be nebulous in their origins and perhaps staged or faked, especially in this era of fake news. And, when you hear about, somebody blew up a bomb somewhere, so it was terrorist. We don't really know. This could be contrived. But the terrorist attacks that Russia suffered in the early 2000s were horrific and publicly watched. And there was no question what was going on. And the worst one I'll point out here was in the 2004 Beslan school siege. I think it was in, was it in Ossetia or Ingushetia? I can't remember. It wasn't in Chechnya, but it was in one of the provinces right next door to it. And a bunch of Yahoo, rabid, I guess, Islamic terrorist, fundamentalist, actually took over a kindergarten K through 5 school on the first day of school. I still remember this. It was a horrific story. A bunch of armed people strapped with explosives took over a K through 5 school on the first day of school with all the parents dropping their kids off. Got all the kids in the gymnasium, strapped the whole place with dynamite, and started making demands that Vladimir Putin's government was going to release a bunch of freedom fighter terrorists who were imprisoned. Vladimir Putin's response was within hours to send special forces down to physically retake the school. By special forces, think like Green Berets. What's the Marine, hardcore military Marine got? What's that? I'm thinking of, what's the Marine guys that are like the first, the Rangers. Rangers Army. Somebody help me out here. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. He sent in special forces, and they tried to retake the school by force, and no one really knows what happened next, but they blew up the entire gymnasium. I say the terrorists detonated everything they had, and then the next scenes are a bunch of dead children and maimed children. And this infuriated the Russians. And they didn't get mad at Vladimir Putin for doing it. They got mad at terrorists for it happening. So people even supported Vladimir Putin. Even when this thing went wrong, they supported his aggressive move to stand up to terrorism. And his popularity grows. By the way, before I even get to that one, there was another one in Moscow. I remember reporting on this in like 2006 or 7. Might have been before that. In Moscow, supposedly it was a bunch of Chechen terrorists. But a bunch of terrorists took over the Moscow theater. It was like an opera. And while an opera was happening, a bunch of armed people ran into this opera house in the main Moscow theater and took everybody hostage and started making demands. And Putin pretty much did the same thing. He sent in special forces. They put sleeping gas, knockout gas in the ventilation and knocked everyone out, including all the hostages. Knocked everyone out, sent in special forces, and not one of the terrorists survived. Now remember, I just said they all got knocked out, so they could have survived, but all the terrorists all got shot like 500 times in the back of the head, and then that siege was over. Some of the hostages actually did die, but it was a resounding huge success from the public standpoint, and his popularity grew even more. He even went on TV one time. I can't remember, it was before this siege, or there was a bombing that went off in St. Petersburg airport, I believe. And not even that many people got killed. Just a few people got killed. But Putin went on international TV or national TV and said, "We will hunt these dogs down in the gutter. We will find these people and we will kill them." I mean, he said that. Can you imagine any U.S. president getting on and saying, "We're going to find these people and kill them"? He wasn't talking about bringing them to justice. We're going to kill these people. That's the kind of guy he is, and that's part of his brand image that people find wildly popular. And this was over a decade ago. That kind of stance plays out even more in today's world. People like that more now than ever before. So, I'm sorry, first time chatter from Saints fan of Navy SEALs. Thank you, Saints fan. I can't think of even the damn Navy SEALs. My head's all getting crazy with all these terrorist attacks I'm talking about. And so Putin's popularity grows even more. And into the 21st century, what has gone right for Vladimir Putin, or what's gone right for Russia? In a word, Putin. Putin has turned things around. This is still only from the 1999 to say 2010. I'm still only in his first decade in power. What's gone right for Russia? In a word, Putin. In another, petroleum. And this entire first 10 years of Putin's power, the price of oil is sky high. It's the highest it's been for a very long time, and for an extended period of time. Why is that important? Because Russia is one of the world's leading exporters of oil. So 1999, Russia's broke, corrupt, everything's screwed up, everything's terrible. 10 years later, he's cleaned up corruption, or at least taken over the corruption. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. He cracked down on corruption all right, and probably skimmed a lot on the process. But he at least said, hey, we're taking back all of the properties that were stolen by these rich oligarchs, state property like the oil companies, and that money's going to start floating back into the government coffers again. And we're going to clean up the street, and we're going to start enforcing a rule of law again, and we're going to try to get things back at least to a standardized state situation. And he did do all that. And part of the reason he could is because the petrodollars were flowing into Russia for a whole decade in a really big way. So here's what happened on the side. Putin is president of Russia. 2000, he's elected. Oil is expensive as hell. Crushed the Second Chechen War in 1999. Crushed terrorist activity from 2000 to 2008. Crushed oligarchs who challenged him in any way. Took back property from oligarchs. Beat down corruption, or at least finessed it, all right, so that the state and himself are benefiting from it, but keeping it under control. So it was uncontrolled corruption. Now it's Putin-controlled corruption, okay? Crushed the press who challenged him. Anybody who got in his way, any reporter that tried to investigate him, those folks went by the wayside. State renationalized critical industries, including oil, and took over much of the press, if not all of it. So now all the news in Russia is government news. Why is that important? Because it's part of the reason why Russians love him. They're only getting one side of the story. It's an actually pretty good story for Russians, but they're still only getting the one side. They only ever hear about how awesome Vladimir Putin's Russia is. That's all they hear. You don't ever hear anything critical, and that plays on the national psyche after a while. You're like, everything is great. My life is getting better. And it's all because of this guy. Why do I know that? Because the press is telling me that every day. Putin gets the Russian house in order. And by the end of his first decade in power, his approval ratings hover around 80 to 90%. Yes, you heard that right. 80 to 90% approval ratings. What? Beloved. What politician on planet Earth wouldn't give a testicle to have approval ratings? Hell, most would give a testicle to have approval ratings of 50 or 60%. 80 or 90% approval ratings? Yeah, they might. Some politicians would give them both. I know that's sexist. I'm counting out women politicians, but women politicians usually aren't this foolish to give a testicle even if they had one. So he is now, by 2008, firmly in charge of Russia. But his time is running out, okay? Because they have a 2-term limit in Russia on presidents. He had already served 2 4-year terms. So it was time for him to leave before he got a chance to reform a great Soviet reunion, all right? So I'm going to stop there, and we'll pick up this tomorrow, because this is actually the point at which I said I was going to do a separate talk for tomorrow of when did Russia start taking back territories, today's move just being the most recent. It actually starts back in 2008. But we've already gone an hour and a half. Sorry, everyone. So if anybody wants me to make a flash quiz out of this, send me a bunch of questions. Shouldn't be too hard. We'll do it all again tomorrow, because I do want to see how Russia's grab of eastern Ukraine plays out in the press for 24 hours. See if there's any other movement. And then I'll pick back up this story and get you from the invasion of Georgia to the invasion of eastern Ukraine. How about them cookies? Cool? Word. Any questions about anything I've talked about so far? Comments? Questions? Did you learn? Did you learn anything? Am I too jaded? Am I too cynical? Do I appear to be too political? Do I appear to be praising one side of a political spectrum? I'm really not. I try to be fair and balanced. Actually, I don't even try to be fair and balanced. I'm just trying to tell you what happened. What happened and roughly kind of why it happened in the order that it did happen. And we're only halfway through Putin's leadership term in Russia, and we're already at approval of 80 to 90% amongst average Russians, setting the stage for him to be powerful enough to start flexing Russian power back outward. So the first decade, remember this for you test questions, the first decade of Putin's power was putting Russia's house in order. Now as 2008, 2009, 2010 rolls around, he now is starting to focus, he's going to shift focus into pushing that power back abroad. Get it? It's kind of two terms of Russia's, Vladimir Putin's power. House in order, expand the house. We're in the second now, but we'll save that lecture for tomorrow. Any questions about anything before we go? Our cover says, do I have a folder of Putin pics on your desktop? I do not. I usually just go out and search for them before I do a presentation. Ashley thinks Putin is a wizard. Could be. I speculate he could be a Vlad Dracul. He could be a vampire who's just been around this entire time. In fact, let me go back and look. Let's go way back in this. I think that one picture of the Vlad that I got kind of looks like him. Where'd it go? Right. No. We've covered so much ground here today. Here you go. I don't know, folks. That could be him. Vladimir Putin could be Vlad Dracul, Prince of Wallachia, who's simply still alive because he's a vampire. Transformative vampire. Yes, Ashley, by house, I mean Putin and his lackeys. No, I'm talking about the whole Russian house. If nothing else, one could look simply at Russia's military. And their military was absolutely bankrupt in 1994. It's one of the reasons why they couldn't even put down, the entirety of Russia's army couldn't even put down a group of guerrilla warfare folks in the mountains of Chechnya. They were losing that war. They were broke. People were selling tanks for money. Oh, remind me to tell you this hilarious story of how they caught somebody trying to sell a damn nuclear weapon across the border in Kazakhstan. So people were selling their guns and stuff in the military because they were so broke they weren't getting paid. I forgot to add that in. Public servants weren't even getting paid in the 90s. Policemen, the army, that's like, we didn't have the money to pay them. That's how societies break down. So if you look at nothing else besides the military, when Putin took over in 1999, Russia's military was broke and disbanding. And now we're talking 20 years later, and they're invading eastern Ukraine after building up 150 or 160,000 troops on the border. That one thing alone tells you the impact Putin has had on Russia and Russia's house. I keep saying putting the house in order. Just look at the military as kind of a case in point of him putting that house in order. Okay, only here for the podcast says, thank you. I took World Regions in 2011, 1 decade ago, and continue to appreciate the context you provide. Thank you. Only here for the podcast. We'll be here tomorrow night. H Trees up in the hills saying, at what point would Putin be considered a card-carrying autocrat? Well, certainly now, but I think about this time that I'm going to kick into tomorrow. I think 2007, 2008, 2009. I think really the decade of 2010 to 2020 is when he comes fully into full autocratic power. One could say dictator, but they do hold elections, and he does legitimately win those elections, even though they're not particularly fair elections. People do vote for him, and he does win the majority of the votes. I only say it's not really democracy because there's not really other political parties. They don't get a chance, really. So autocrat, dictator still seems like a strong term. Authoritarian, for sure. Autocrat, authoritarian, for sure. That really, he becomes full-on authoritarian autocrat in the 2010s. First-time chatter from Lucy Royale. Lucy Royale says, hi, Professor Boyer. We are having a watch party of your stream. Well, thank you so much, Lucy Royale, and everyone hanging out at the party, the Putin party. Okay. Ashley says, it's honestly impressive how easily he's managed to gain and keep power and have people love him. Yeah. Well-loved dictator. Has that ever happened before? Oh, sure. I mean, it's so funny because I was having a chat with, and I owe this person an email. Someone in the class right now hit me up saying they disagreed with my term fascist in the book and didn't like it because I suggested, well, from my understanding, the only real difference between a military dictator / a dictator and a fascist is that the modern incarnations of fascist, they're put there by the people. So, and Hitler and Mussolini are the best examples. Mussolini is a better example, even though he's not a good one either. Hitler came to power with a mission. He was psychotic. He had a mission, global domination, kill all the Jews, nutbag, all right? But he, through his speeches, and would rally people with, anti-Semitism and racism, but also rallied them about make Germany great again. And we've been shit on in history, and we were screwed in World War I, and our economy sucks, and we're going to make Germany great again. And that was Hitler's real draw. The other stuff didn't hurt, especially if you're a racist anti-Semite idiot. But all that part and parcel is how Hitler gained popularity. Obviously, he was not popular with the people he was trying to kill, but the vast majority of Germans supported Hitler's rise. It's one of the reasons why the Germans in today's world are so apologetic. He didn't come in by force and take over. He made lots of speeches and worked for a decade to build political power, and he did, and popularity, and he did. And so by the end of it all, the German people loved him and gave him the power to screw up everything. Mussolini is a good example too, because again, he was make Italy great again and built great statues to himself, and things kind of got better under his reign. He was pro-nationalist and anti-immigration. Do any of these themes sound familiar, by the way, in the modern era? So these folks rose to power, and that's what I said in the book is they're fascist. So there's can be right-wing dictatorships, authoritarian right-wingers, but the only difference I can see is that a dictator has to take power by force and maintain that power by force, whereas fascists somehow, particularly these leaders, were beloved. So people gave them the power. That's why it's hard. That's just my opinion, by the way. This is how I try to understand the differences between the nuances between the more right-wing political systems. I don't know that there are any fascist in today's world because that's kind of a loaded term. We can say people have fascist tendencies. A lot of people might even say Donald Trump had fascist tendencies. Recep Erdogan of Turkey has fascist tendencies. Maybe Vladimir Putin has fascist tendencies. But I don't, to kind of be the all-powerful ruler. I don't know what else baggage goes along with the term fascism because it's up to you, the viewers, and the smart people out there to figure out what that means for you. But I don't know that I'd call Vladimir Putin a fascist because I don't really know what that denotes specifically in the political spectrum anymore. It's gotten very muddied for me. The older I get, the more I understand that I don't understand how we make attribute these political systems. I would say right now on planet Earth, you have the rise of authoritarians. No doubt about that. Conservative to ultra-conservative, you can call them right-wing if you want. Ultra-conservative authoritarians who want all power absorbed to themselves and want to fix their society with solutions only they have the keys to. I'm going to fix everything. I'm going to make China great again. I'm going to make Russia great again. I'm going to make America great again. There's this move towards the authoritarian right that none of us dispute. Now, what makes Xi Jinping or Recep Erdogan or Viktor Orban of Hungary, what makes them a fascist? I don't know. I'd love to have your input. I actually don't know when you cross that line and you call someone a fascist. What's the difference? I'm more comfortable saying, yeah, these are all ultra-conservative right-wing authoritarians who are absorbing all power to themselves and creating a vision of their society/country that cannot be questioned, and they are going to fix everything. That is the trend in the modern world for sure. We could look at other folks like the leader of Brazil falls into that category. Some of the leaders of Poland are starting to fall into this category, albeit at a much lesser level than the other folks I've mentioned. Even the Hindu nationalist leader of India right now. Why am I blanking on his name? Somebody help me out. What's that? Modi, President Modi of India. Most people are saying, yeah, he's kind of in the authoritarian realm now. So it's a certain type of leadership style that absorbs as much power as possible to oneself, and you have the solutions. That's how I identify the trend that's going on now. And a lot of these folks have a lot of popular support. In a discombobulated, confusing, and scary world, a lot more people are attracted to these strong men leaders who supposedly have all the answers and are going to fix everything. And they're conservative to boot. When people get scared in the world, they retreat to conservatism. Let's make things the way they used to be. Let's go back to the old ways. Let's go back to tradition. That was easier for us to understand in a confusing world. Go back to the old ways. Yeah, does that make sense? I'm not making fun of conservatism, by the way. I'm saying that's why you're seeing this trend. The world's getting crazier. There's more information. There's more misinformation. There's more stuff going on. There's more conflict. There's more polarization. People are screaming at each other all the time. And so, and with immigration, cultures are changing and people are moving, and this just frightens people. So it's very natural for more and more people to kind of retreat to conservative ideals, conservative traditions, and support leaders who are outright espousing, I'm going to bring back the good old days. I'm going to set everything right. I'm going to fix everything. Cool? Okay. First time chat. I always love the first time chatters. First time chat from DDSHD. What is he reading the chat from? I don't know. Oh yeah, I can see the chat room. I can see the chat room. I got a little window that DDSHD. I have it open all the time, but usually it goes so fast I can't read everything. But it's slow, so I can check out some comments. Ashley says, so then would Putin potentially become a fascist someday, since he's so wildly popular and democratic elections are basically a joke? Yes, Ashley. He could, according to your definition, he could already be a fascist, or he could evolve into a fascist. Again, I don't know exactly what that means in the modern world anymore. I'm just much more comfortable saying authoritarian because everyone kind of gets that. I'm the authority. I'm authoritarian. I'm right. I'm going to fix it. That we all understand. The nuances of fascism, I'm not sure I can speak to right this second. And Ashley says, so much going on behind the scenes now, too much hidden and too much of a front demonstrated to the public to really know what's going on. Also agreed, Ashley. Thank you, Spoon Dog, for dropping Modi. Sometimes when I start speaking so quickly, my brain can't fire the synapses to come up with the names I'm looking for. First time chatter. Oh, was deleted. Okay. I need to buy followers. How do I buy followers? I don't want to buy followers. I just like talking to folks who want to learn stuff. And hopefully you've learned something tonight. So if you could just do my ego this one little favor, and if anyone is still in here and you actually learned anything, just give me a shout out right now in the chat room. Say, yep, that's me. Gotcha. Learned something. Liked it. Want more of it. Understand the world now. At least a little bit more. I shouldn't even say the world. Understand Vladimir Putin a little more now. Art cover C, he gave me the Velociraptor face, so I'm good. That's always a thumbs up. Shamomu says, yep, thank you, Shamomo. Shen48, great lecture. Thank you, Shen. First time chatter, 789, Sarah. Awesome. Thanks for the first time chatting. W. Hudson says, good stuff. Spoon Dog gives me what the hell? Spoon Dog, what the hell is that? That's one of them Pokemons, right? That's one of those master Pokemons that like can beat all other players. T. Sarah Isa says, Ego Boost coming. Thank you for that, T. Ashley says, I need to do some more self-promotion. I know I should. Benman says, thanks, Boyer. Sloot13 drops the Putin on me. Boom. Captain Jack Chickadee drops the Putin as a cat on me. Boom. Moo 2. Thank you, Spoon Dog. Moo 2. I should have known that. I used to buy those damn cards for my youngest kid back in the day. IDC, I was drunk. Give me the drunk face. Ashley had a great time. I know a lot of this already, but definitely learned some new things. That's what I'm all about. Vikram Tawari, my main man, learned a lot. Want more of it? Please keep the knowledge spreading. Pet Frog says, fingers crossed the nukes don't fly before tomorrow's stream. They will not, Pet Frog. There will be no nukes. And no nukes is good nukes. There'll be no nukes before tomorrow. And I kind of doubt there'll be any nukes at all. Not if Putin holds where he's at. And he's a smart fellow, that Putin. So I can't imagine him really wanting global thermonuclear war. Shall we play a game in eastern Ukraine? I don't think he wants to play that game. So we'll talk more about what he may want to do and what he may continue to do, because we're seeing it happen right now. But we'll do all that tomorrow. Same plaid time, same plaid channel right here on Twitch. We'll pick up in the year 2008 as Russia's getting ready to invade Georgia and bring it on forward. And it won't take 2 hours, my friends, because we've done most of the groundwork at this point. Now we're just going to see why Putin's doing this, where he's doing it, and where he's likely to do more of it tomorrow. Thank you all for tuning in, and I love you all, and good night. And as always,